So, welcome to another episode of LBF Outdoors. It's a time where it's pretty much impossible to fish, so I've been a bit busy doing other things. But in this video, I'm going to talk about the top 5 baits for me this year, not necessarily that caught me the most fish, but the ones that got me the most memorable fish catches. So, firstly, I'm going to start off with the Berkley Power Bait Minnow, and specifically the white ones, because I've been using them for a long time. So this year though, I started using them in the winter, ice fishing for lake trout. They are amazing for lake trout through the ice and in open water. In the summer, I spent a lot of time vertical jigging for lake trout in about 50 to 130 feet of water with these Berkley Power Bait minnows. And the lake trout just absolutely love them. No matter what the weather seems to be, they always seem to hit these. And I'll definitely be using them a lot next year. A lot of people at the lake that I fish for lake trout tend to like to troll for lake trout, and that's what my dad used to do when he was younger too. But I have found it a lot more effective to go locate the fish, the individual fish, drop down to them, play with them on the fish finder, and then catch them. And I find I catch a lot more and better size. So the second bait I'm going to talk about is the classic twister tail grub. So I've been using these things my entire life. They're one of the first baits I ever used, and they're meant for walleye, and they're really good for walleye. And this year really showed that, because the biggest walleye I caught this year, actually, I caught on one of these twister tail grubs. And it was an 8-pound walleye. Not my biggest walleye, that would have been my third biggest walleye I've ever caught. But I'd kind of forgotten about them for a few years because I used to use them a lot when I was a lot younger, but I sort of came back to them this year, um, thanks to a friend of mine who uses them almost daily when he goes fishing, and he kind of brought me back to them. And yeah, they're a great bait for a lot of species, but especially walleye. And the third bait I'm going to talk about is the Senko. So I've been using these for bass for the last few years. They're probably the most effective bass bait overall. Like, if you're just struggling to catch them, then you can't go wrong using a Senko. And a lot of the times this year, I was sort of faced with tough conditions for largemouth, and I found that for some reason they wouldn't bite the same baits that they traditionally would for me. So a lot of the times I had to resort to these, and they would end up producing some pretty good fish. And then we have, for the fourth bait, the Berkley Havoc Pit Boss. This is another bait that I used to use a lot more also when I was younger, and they were probably one of my favorite baits for largemouth. And again, I came back to them this year. So they're basically a creature bait. This is not my preferred color. This is black and blue. My preferred colors are sort of green pumpkin and stuff like that. But regardless, great bait. They're basically just a creature bait. They're pretty simple, but you just Texas rig them, and you can fish them shallow, deep, in weeds, over logs even. And one lake in particular, you just fish the whole entire lake, the shoreline of the lake, from a canoe, and you just caught fish under every tree or anything. Like, it was just amazing. So yeah, that was a bait that caught me a lot of my largemouth this year. This year was a tougher year for largemouth. It was a better year for smallmouth. And I forgot to mention, with the twister tail grubs, I caught my personal best smallmouth on those this year in Algonquin Park. And yeah, so never underestimate the power of a Mr. Twister. I also, with the white power bait minnows, I also forgot to mention, with the smallmouth in Algonquin Park, you just go to the middle of this lake in the morning and they'd be feeding on suspended minnows, and you just cast out, you can cast out literally anything, but the white power bait minnows were what were resembling the bait fish the most, because I think they were like Cisco's and stuff like that. So yeah, great all around bait. And finally, for the last bait, this bait didn't catch me very many fish because it is a big bait, It is the suic. And I've been using this bait for a couple of years, trying to catch muskie out on the river. I was not successful in landing one until, not on this bait anyways. I wasn't successful in landing a muskie on this bait until this year. So until this year, I hadn't caught a muskie for probably 2 or 3 years. And then this fall, like in September, it just got really good for muskie for some reason. And it all started one day when it was really hot out. There was a tornado warning. So I decided that would be a good time to go fishing for muskie, since they like that pressure change and that intense weather. So I went out and I took 3 casts with this suic at one of the most popular muskie spots on my section of the river, and 3 casts, and I felt just dead weight, and I knew it wasn't a pike or a bass, because that's what I'd been catching on these for a while. And it was a nice, somewhere around 23-pound muskie. It was 45.1 inches. And yeah, so it was cool to catch a muskie almost in the middle of a tornado, but I had to evacuate to someone's house because the weather was actually getting pretty extreme. And then yeah, so I never gave up on this bait. It wasn't producing muskies for me before like I wanted it to, but it eventually pulled through and caught me a nice one. And then I caught a few more muskies as well this fall. I caught one about the same size a few days later on a bucktail. So this fall was just an amazing fall for muskie. Yeah, so those are the 5 most productive baits for me, that caught me the most memorable fish catches. And yeah, the year isn't over yet. This was just for the 2018 open water, freshwater season. There's still more to come for the year. At the end of the year, I'll also be doing a highlights video for the year. So anyways, thanks for watching this short video, and hopefully you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time.